Well, let's get more now. We can speak to Manuel Hassassian, who is the Palestinian Ambassador to Denmark and the former Palestinian Ambassador to the United Kingdom. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. Ambassador, President Emmanuel Macron is the latest world leader to announce that his country recognises Palestinian statehood. That's together with Australia, Canada, Portugal, and the UK. Now, you were ambassador to the UK before. I mean, what's your reaction to all of this?
Well, let me start first by sharing with you my reaction to the UK recognition of the state of Palestine. First of all, the problem of Palestine started with the British mandate with the Balfour Declaration in 1917. It has been 108 years since, the British government has been, not recognizing the state of Palestine. But it came at a time now when mounting pressure from the British people as to the atrocious and naked aggression of the Zionist IDF forces killing and maiming, people, which is a genocide in Gaza, that the Labour Party with Keir Starmer, as being the leading party, has announced that they will recognize the state of Palestine. However, we know that this statement came back to us in July, where he had put some conditions on the Israelis: the withdrawal from Gaza, the stopping of the carnage, the allowing of humanitarian aid, as conditions for them if they don't want the United Kingdom to basically recognize the state of Palestine. Now, after like almost 2-3 months now, the Israelis have never paid any heed. They never care about UK or any other European countries. They're still continuing with their, assault on the Palestinian people, let alone in the West Bank with the settlers and East Jerusalem and what have you. So this recognition comes as a pressure, mounting pressure from the UK public, and at the same time, the non-acceptance of the Israelis to the conditions of the British as to the recognition of Palestine. Now, this is long overdue, I would say, recognition by the UK. However, the intricacy of this matter is the fact that we haven't seen the area that this Palestinian state would be recognized by the UK, let alone by Macron and many others. They say we recognize the state of Palestine as part and parcel of the two-state solution, where negotiations eventually will lead to the self-determination of the Palestinians and having an independent state. But nobody talked about the stopping of the carnage. Nobody talked about the area which is, legitimized by the international community, 1967 borders being, the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem. Nobody was talking about that. So what does it mean to recognize the state of Palestine if you don't have borders, if the occupation does not end, if the carnage does not continue, going on and on and on and on? Then it is an empty, hollow promise. So that's why we should not be highly, jubilant about this decision, as much as we have to be careful that these countries are trying basically to consume the anger of their public opinion and to go ahead and say, we wash our hands like Pilate from the blood of Jesus Christ, but now the Israelis are continuing with their onslaught.
Okay, so you make a lot of points there. I mean, clearly there is symbolism in these announcements, and you've touched on that. But concretely, and I want to ask you from a diplomatic point of view, does this translate into a sort of a diplomatic upgrade for Palestine, given that theoretically the UK, France, and other countries that have recognized a Palestinian state will now be looking at the Palestinians and the Israelis on an even footing? Is that significant?
Well, let me tell you, the significance of the recognition on the international level, yes. Now, our missions will become full-fledged embassies with the hoisting of the flag and having all the kind of privileges, immunity, diplomatic, and what have you. Yes, I do agree to that. We will be joining international organizations. We will be part of the international community. We will be full-fledged members of the United Nations. All these are considered to be, assets to the Palestinians when it comes to the international legitimacy, when it comes to the recognition of the state of Palestine. But factually on the ground, what does that mean? If Israel does not stop the carnage, withdraw, and end the occupation, and try to sit at the negotiating table to find the final contours of the state, which means the end of conflict, I don't see that there is a lot of significance there. Yes, on the international level, yeah, our status will be much better than before. We will be having bilateral relations state to state with Europeans, with Asiatic countries, with other, countries in the world. From that perspective, I think we have scored diplomatically, and we have isolated, Israel from the world. But in terms of concrete action, I think still the United States of America is not convinced, and it's not on par with Europe and what have you, to come ahead and say enough is enough. Let's recognize the state of Palestine and let's conduct the negotiations state to state and not between an occupier and occupied.
Indeed, and just hearing what President Trump was saying at the UN this evening, it very much sounds exactly the same as what President Netanyahu's been saying these decisions by these countries like France and the United Kingdom are merely a gift to Hamas. But, I mean, clearly President Trump holds the key here. Well, he holds a major key here. And, you're a diplomat. How are you going to win President Trump over and show him and people that think like him that, in fact, this isn't a gift to Hamas? How do you win him over?
Well, first of all, it's not a gift for Hamas. It's so unfortunate that 2 years our people in Gaza have endured these atrocious crimes. And for the last 70 years, we have been struggling diplomatically through armed struggle and what have you to gain our self-determination in pronouncing our independent state. And things did not start with October 7th or after October 7th. It is the high time for the international community to recognize that the Palestinian is the only people in modern history that have not really accomplished their self-determination. And, paying such heavy prices under occupation, I think it's about time that the international conscience should take an active role in trying to put pressures on the various governments, let alone on Israel, by taking firm stance, like withdrawing their ambassadors, cutting relationship as much as possible politically, try to boycott them economically and whatever. These are the pressures that could change the position of President Trump, feeling that, Israel is isolated, and he knows that for a fact, and the United States cannot keep on justifying acting as the PR and the supporter in bolstering, basically, the Israelis in every single move that is ruining the two-state solution, which is the only game in town, which has been shouldered by the international community for so many years now. So I don't think Trump will continue with this. I think things are going to change. I think this diplomatic recognition, although it has some symbolic significance, but this significance of the recognition should be emboldened by an action plan from European governments in dealing with the state of Israel, without putting pressure through diplomatic relations, through boycott and what have you, and not, of course, sending arms to Israel. I think there will be a reconsideration by President Trump.
What do you think about the Abraham Accords as being a major tool at the disposal of the countries that are already signatories and the countries that might one day be signatories? How would you like to see those countries using that particular diplomatic tool?
It is unfortunate that the Abrahamic tool started on the wrong footing, and now it is ending on the right footing. The right footing is the basic fact that the Palestinians should be recognized with a state, and then normalization of Arab countries, Islamic countries with Israel should take place. It's not before ending occupation, and that's why the Abrahamic Accord is not significant. And for the simple fact, look what happened in Doha when Israel, did not respect the integrity and sovereignty of Qatar and went ahead and bombed Doha. That in itself shows that all these accords are insignificant and they don't have any value when it comes to the facts on the ground. And that's why I believe that Abrahamic Accords were premature, and it had proved its failure because the United States is not fulfilling its promises to the Gulf countries in terms of protection. And President Trump is trying to dodge away from the idea that he was, notified with this airstrike in Doha. And if this proves something, it proves a total failure.
Just lastly, Ambassador, I just wonder if you could explain to our viewers who might not know the history of the Palestinians, who might not know the facts, the Sykes-Picot Accord of 1916, and what it's meant for the Palestinians ever since 1948 not to have a state. What is the reality for a Palestinian person without a state? What does it mean, and what does it mean they can and can't do?
Well, basically, we are not inhabitants. We have a national identity. We kept our national identity. We have always been part and parcel of the Arab world and the Islamic world. Many countries in Asia, Africa, the Arab world have recognized the state of Palestine. But, it did not have any significance because we are under occupation for the last 60 years now. And that's why, we have been struggling, and we never stopped struggling through peaceful means, through armed struggle and what have you, and through political accommodation. We have reached a point where we have a deep conviction that there is no military solution to this conflict. So what is the other option? The other option have been negotiations. And we have embarked on a tumultuous path of negotiations since 1988, when we declared the independence of Palestine unilaterally and accepted that the only solution is through political accommodation. And that's why we went into the Oslo Agreement, believing that this would lead to an independent Palestinian state based on negotiations on par between Israel and the Palestinians and brokered by the United States of America. What happened? Netanyahu comes to power and he destroys the Oslo Agreement by building more settlements, by invading Gaza, by creating new facts on the ground and making it very difficult for the Palestinians to move. And now we have almost 100, gates that closes every single village and city in the West Bank. So we are living in an open concentration camp, and Netanyahu does not pay heed to any of the international laws and orders and what have you. And the United States, unfortunately, unequivocally, is still supporting this Zionist project of creating an entity in a land which is not theirs. And that's why I tell you that the Palestinians will continue in more or less preserving their national identity, in outcrying to the international community that promised them in terms of shouldering the two-state solution, and that the international legitimacy with all the UN resolutions are all with the Palestinian people. What does it take, basically, to America and the rest of the world to recognize that the Palestinians have a national identity, a geography, a demography, a flag, one gun, and one authority?
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Manuel Hassassian, Palestinian Ambassador to Denmark. Thank you very much indeed for your time, sir.
Thank you.